Welcome back. So we're talking to the Minister of State in charge of Government Communications. Let me read some of your comments for him. Bernard, good evening. Can you please ask Felix about the fallout between the president and the chairman of the party over the ministerial appointment snap? Thank you. You don't add your name. Good evening. Please ask the Honorable, what is the president's plan towards the NSS payment and if they have any plans of increasing it? Good evening. Please ask Mr. Ofosu, what are the plans for the maritime industry? We can change the economy of Ghana with the maritime industry alone. Example, Malaysia, Singapore, Isaac Nyanyo. Good evening. Ask the minister when the president is appointing CEO for Ghana Post, Sule from Tamale. I want to know why Isaac Adongo and Zaneto Ajima Rawlings are not in government yet. That's also from a viewer. And then Bernard, I think just as Felix is saying, we shorten the transition period to preclude lawlessness. I think it's about time we also stop this constituency and regional collation of electoral results. When we vote at polling stations and count, there's usually no problem whatsoever. Our trouble starts at the constituency and regional collation centers. We need, as a matter of urgency, electoral reform, an electronic voting system that receives results from all polling stations across the country, adds them up electronically in real time. This can even be telecast for transparency reasons, so everyone sees as the figures come in and get added. We are tired of election results tension. Bernard, thank you. This is from SOA. So I know you. Let me do Adongo and Zaneto.
Sure.
What do you do?
Well, the point also is that, Bernard, you can also not lose all your experienced hands in Parliament because someone needs to hold the fort in Parliament. For instance, someone may argue that why was Honorable Mahama not made a minister, given all these qualifications and all that, but he eventually became a majority leader. Honorable Okisegan, vastly experienced in finance and what have you. He was one time deputy finance minister. One can argue that maybe he was primed to become a finance minister, but he's now a deputy majority leader. So Honorable Adongo, Honorable Zaneto, are fine materials by any stretch of the imagination. They've proven their competence and what have you. But I think that there are other roles that they can play outside of government. Mind you, it's a 4-year journey also. So who is to say that there will not be changes along the line so that they find themselves in the executive? I'm sure they understand that there are various roles that one can play in support of President Mahama's agenda. Yeah.
We haven't heard anything about the 24-hour economy.
Yes, indeed. I think early last week, President Mahama held a meeting with Mr. Guzitano, who is being pegged to lead that effort. And extensive discussions were held on the way forward. Very soon, they will come up with some public engagement to bring the public along in terms of the work that they are doing. That is an outfit that will go all out to spearhead the implementation of the 24-hour economy. So in short order, you will hear from them. Yeah.
This oral thing that was handed over to the president, he's asked the AG to do what?
Essentially, oral, as I announced in the statement that set them up, was to gather information. Because in the immediate after, in fact, even before the elections, we were inundated with claims of wrongdoing by various people. But there was no center to which those claims could be sent. It was obvious that the government of the day was simply not interested in fighting corruption or doing anything about it for that matter. They clearly were not in a position to address the problem. So people felt that the NDC was the alternative. And so right after the election, President Mahama himself was inundated and overwhelmed with complaints and people making allegations and accusations. So he says, look, let me set up a system that we can use to receive these complaints, process it somewhat, so that when we take over power, we are then able to hand it over to the appropriate quarters to look into. So over 2,400 complaints were received. Over 1,400 phone calls came in. Over 900 emails were sent containing all manner of information. Out of these, 230 of them were thoroughly reviewed and found to have some basis and substance. Okay. So the report of that was presented to the president today, who then immediately handed it over to the Attorney General to look into. And I can assure you, Bernard, that in the next few days, very major action is going to be taken on some of those cases. Some of the cases are so straightforward. The evidence is so compelling that one needs to act on it very quickly.
So what is the objective? To recover the money or to punish the supposed thieves?
The Attorney General made comments at the event today. And he says he has a dual approach. Okay. The emphasis is on recovery. So if you can recover whatever has been stolen, that will be the first priority. And then after recovery, or even before that, there are those whose crimes are serious enough to warrant prosecution, and he will go all out to ensure that that is done. But ultimately, it's to send a signal that you cannot act with impunity once you take public office. You cannot abuse office to enrich yourself and think that you can get away with it because there's been some laxity.
But all that is happening with the Attorney General dropping charges against most previously accused
yes,
people.
Bernard,
How
that one,
does
so
that sit?
let me point out that in the coming days, this week, the Attorney General has indicated that he will hold a press conference to account for the reasoning that went into that particular action. Bernard, I have always said, for instance, that what justification existed for prosecuting Ofosu and leaving who the people I describe as state-sponsored terrorists who engaged in that mayhem material as well. So there's a by-election. The MPP puts men who are masked, carrying heavy weapons to attack NDC supporters who were just helping with the party's mobilization towards the elections. There's a commission of inquiry which identifies specific wrongdoers and prescribes sanctions for them. The government of the day refuses. Rather, it goes for the chairman of the opposition party, who it accuses of convening a meeting to discuss a response to the attack that the NDC members of. This clearly was a travesty of justice. It was clearly trumped up charges. I followed the Atufosin case closely. Bernard, there's no doubt that that case was instituted to silence him as as ranking member of finance when the e-levy debate came up. The appeals court threw it out, and I don't know whether you've read the reasoning given for that ruling. Sound judgment. But the time decided that he needed to pursue it because the elections were coming, he needed to further silence Honorable Atufosin, and there are a whole host of cases like that. So the Attorney General says that he has studied those dockets and come to the conclusion that there was no merit in them, and that continuing them would only amount to a waste of time. In any event, Nolly prosecutor is one of the tools available to the Attorney General. In fact, many people do not know that in the Atufosin case, the second accused, who used to be the chief director of the health ministry, benefited from a Nolly prosecutor from the Attorney General himself, Godfrey Dami, at the time. So if Godfrey Dami on his own, the one who took the cases to court, is minded to issue Nolly prosecutors at some point, why can the succeeding Attorney General not do the same if he studies the brief and comes to the conclusion that
your view that a lot of those cases were political?
They were politically motivated.
There's Atufosin, there's Opuni, there's some of the bank store issues.
Look at the injustice Opuni suffered. The judge who was picked to handle that case was a judge who had publicly expressed partisan support for President Akufo-Addo. You recall at some point, because of age, he had to retire. A new judge was brought in who reviewed the case and said that he needed to start afresh. Within weeks of that judgment, he was transferred to Kumasi, to a place where he had no court to sit. Punitive action was taken against him because he decided to start the case. This clearly was the law being weaponized against political opponents. And it is not in the interest of the people of Ghana that the state sustains cases that have no merit. That will amount to wasting their time and their resources. So the Attorney General takes the view that these cases do not have merit and therefore should not be continued. But he says that, normally reasons are not given from Nolly prosecutor. Godfrey Dami did not explain why he let the second accused in the Atufosin go. But this Attorney General says that in the spirit of accountability and transparency, he will engage the public and give reasons for why. I think that is a significant step forward, and I'm sure you in the media will look forward to it. But the caution there is that as a people also, we must guard against allowing our resources to be used for this kind of activity. We must separate that clearly from the need to go after people who are from the... And Bernard, some of the issues that Oral has dealt with are matters that you have dealt with on your show. The evidence is so glaring and... For instance, look at this SkyTrain business. $2.8 million is paid, and yet not a single metal was put in place anywhere to construct anywhere.
Apparently for feasibility studies.
How? And so what became of those
Where is
studies?
The special prosecutor and all of this? Is President Mahama going to work with the special prosecutor?
The special prosecutor was appointed on the basis of law. There's enabling legislation that allows his office to exist. That legislation still exists, so he is free to carry out his work. Mind you, he's supposed to be independent. Once cases
I'm
are
asking
to
this
him.
because a lot of the cases Oral found have to do with politically exposed persons.
Yes.
And we're told that the SP's remit, what distinguishes him from others was that politically exposed persons involved in corruption, they felt that we needed to have that because the Attorney General is a minister of the government.
Well, let me say.
So how come he hasn't really...
Let me say, and here I'm speaking for myself.
Okay.
I have a track record of questioning the relevance of that office since it was...
Personally,
and I need to draw that distinction.
But what's the president's view on the office?
Well, the president thinks that it is a useful tool for fighting corruption. The point is that despite the existence of the office of the special prosecutor, the government has just gone out of power. The Attorney General was still prosecuting politically exposed persons. Indeed, all the cases that have now been thrown out were cases that were being pursued against politically exposed persons. So one then questions the relevance of having another office to do essentially what the Attorney General can do and more. So that is a question for some debate. I have my own views on it. But the president thinks that to the extent that he exists, that is a special prosecutor.
So do you foresee the Attorney General hiving up some of these cases to him?
Well, I see no reason why that cannot happen if the Attorney General deems it necessary.
Or could it be that because this president didn't appoint the special prosecutor, he's not comfortable working with him?
There are people who the president did not appoint into certain positions, but he has retained them. One of them is the NCA Director General, who was appointed by the previous government in a certain capacity, but he's been elevated to become.
But he worked with Dr. Bani Mahama when he was there as minister.
Yes, but
so he's been there for almost 20 years.
Exactly, but the president has not said that because he didn't belong to his party or he did not appoint him, he will get.
No, but he wasn't appointed by the Akufo-Addo government. This is different.
Exactly,
because this special
the point I'm making
was
is that,
appointed by.
But the point I'm making is that yes, there are people who were appointed by the previous government who will remain. You understand me? Again, the special prosecutor cannot be dismissed. He has security of tenure that is enshrined in law. The law was passed by Parliament. To the extent that the law exists, there's nothing that you can do about him. So
there's a lot of people in the NDC who do not think that the Electoral Commission chairperson and some of her deputies were fair to your government.
They were not. And I have been a fierce critic of.
So what is the president's view on that?
Bernard, the law is clear. The Electoral Commissioner has security of tenure. You cannot remove her until she turns 70, when she goes for retirement. Or you cannot remove her until stated misconduct. As we speak, the president has not been given evidence of stated misconduct. If that happens, he will kickstart the processes that will lead into looking into that complaint and taking the necessary action. But on his own, he's not going to dismiss anybody simply because he did not appoint them. He does not have a history of doing that. Especially in those places where the law regulates how the appointment or removal should be done.
So can we say same for IGP?
Yeah, that one is within the purview of the president. Conventionally, the heads of all the security agencies have changed when there has been a change. I don't think anybody will raise any qualms about it. I don't know what the president intends to do in that regard. But if it happens, I don't think anybody will be surprised. It will not be against the norm, as it were.
Because the jury is still out there on the IGP. Some people think he was fair to the government, to this, when you were in opposition.
Whether he was,
other people also believe that. Because there's a view that the governments tend to influence the heads of institutions against the opposition. So when the opposition comes in,
that is yet another weakness.
That
is yet another weakness in our institutional arrangement that we need to address. There are those who have even argued that don't we even need an independent police commission that does this appointment and insulates them from the presidency. But the point must be made that we cannot make appointments or dismissal based on perceptions that one was fair or unfair to a government. We need to follow the law to the letter. What does the law say? The removal of security chiefs has become a bit of a convention. That people think that, okay, allow the new president to have some control in terms of who he chooses to to head the various agencies. It is something that has happened to all heads of security agencies whenever government has changed. So if that were to happen, you will not be surprised. I don't think the public will be surprised. It's not raising.
What is the view about Dampare?
Well, I don't have any personal views about him. As I speak, I don't know of evidence of specific wrongdoing against him. He does not need to have done wrong for him to be changed. You understand the point I'm making? So if he is changed, it's not because he's done some wrong. It is just that the president may think that a new direction is needed at the police headquarters, or the direction is needed in the leadership of the police service. That would.
Can we say same for the Chief Justice?
Again, the Chief Justice is not at the beck and call of the president. She's the head, I beg your pardon, of an independent institution.
No, I'm talking about the view towards him. I'm not talking about whether she can be removed.
We have our own views. I have my own views on it. And indeed, Bernard, I'm sure you followed me. I've also been very critical of the judiciary. I don't think that they were fair to the NDC. To be honest, and I don't think they've been fair to the NDC for 32 years.
So even whilst you were in power in the previous...
Yes, I mean, you recall the Rollins era. The government of the day lost just about every case that went to court. You recall the famous case about June 4th and 31st December, the GBC case, and not the one that J.H. Mensa took to court in terms of whether ministers should be vetted again once they've been appointed ministers previously or not. We lost all those cases. Under the MPP, I would say, I'm a member of the executive, I'm a member of the Parliament, and I have not hidden my dissatisfaction about the way that the judiciary has performed in this country. Look, they were manifestly unfair. It was possible for Afenyo Markins to file a case in court and have it slated to be heard within 12 hours. Yet, The minority has filed a case against the passage of the levy, which has been pending for 3 years. By the stroke of a pen.
The minority at the time?
Yes, the minority at the time. I beg your pardon. By the stroke of a pen, Godfrey Dami was able to change a judge sitting on the case. And yet, Opuni tried everything under the sun, and the same judge was maintained. It was possible for a judge who held Kenny Japon in contempt to be changed because it was said that the contempt was committed against him. Yet, the people against whom contempt was supposed to have been done in the Muntie 3 case were sitting on the same case. So the inconsistency, the unfairness, the imbalance is manifest. That is a position that I hold to this day, and I've said this over and over and over again. One of the things that we need to do is that we need to insist that there's fairness, there's balance. Because of historical reasons, I think that there's a certain antipathy towards the NDC. It has a historical basis. But justice ought not to be done on the basis of perception of political parties. Bernard, if what is good for you is done to you, what is good for me should be done to me. Whether you are NDC or NPP, doesn't matter. There's a reason why the symbol of justice is supposed to have a woman who is blind. So it is color blind. Whether you're NDC or NPP, you deserve the same treatment. I don't think that we can say in this country that the NDC has received the same treatment that the NPP has received. I have been to court. I have seen judges exhibit hostility towards NDC people and show, what do you call it, light-handedness towards NPP people. That must change. But that said, it does not constitute sufficient ground to remove a chief justice unless and until you are able to prove that in the discharge of her duties, she's done something against the law. That is the position of President Mahama.
Wow.
Yes.
Let's talk about the parliament finally.
Yes.
The 2/3 majority is very strong.
Yes, it is.
What is the president hoping to do with it?
Well, the president would have a legislative agenda. As I indicated at the beginning of this program, this is the fastest time that a president has had his ministers appointed, vetted, approved, and sworn in. We had to do that at some point through negotiation. You see, we could have run roughshod over the minority. There were many who perceive the dramatic antics of the minority to mean that they were superior to the majority. That was not the case. We would win every vote, but you must also accommodate the views of the minority in parliament. That we are prepared to do. But if push comes to shove, we have the numbers to do any business that we have to. All we need to do is to have 148 people sitting in parliament. If it is one that requires just more than 50% votes. If it requires 2/3, we will get it if we do mobilization. So there's really no problem with our capacity to mobilize and get it done, except that in a democracy, you must also hear the views of the minority. Sometimes it helps in the way that you fine-tune your own policies and program, if it is sincere, if the opposition is done in a sincere manner. But as I told you, I get the impression that there's an effort by the current minority and its leader to overcompensate for the abysmal performance in the 2024 elections. I don't think that it bodes well for them. It's not going to convince anybody. They need to come back to basics. They need to do what they have to do outside of parliament and do what they have to do within the walls of parliament.
Have you identified any, because we know that 2/3 is consequential to the extent of even some constitutional changes?
Yes, that is true.
Some major structural change. Some people think, for example, the president is encumbered by the constitution to choose at least half of his ministers from parliament. Yes. And they think that it doesn't help us.
Yes.
Because there are many good technocrats. I mean, look at the GRA boss.
Yes.
If the president had not been firm, he probably would have been removed.
Yes. And it is a credit of the president that he was able to stand his ground.
So are there conversations at the Jubilee House around some, because you talk about reset.
Yes.
And a lot of people see this electoral victory not just because we like NDC, but they want some things in our democracy to change.
Drastic changes.
So are there one or two things the president is thinking about Parliament considering to change to get the democracy to work better?
Oh, absolutely. There are things that need to be changed. There are some legislation, for instance, the LI that enables the president to exercise a discretion to grant licenses or leases for people to mine in forest reserves. It's one that must go. Or at the very least, that must be amended to remove that discretion that the president has. That one will require some parliamentary process.
So he will agree to relinquish that power?
Today there was a discussion on Galamsey. I'm surprised that the media hasn't covered it that much. There was a high-powered meeting involving 5 sector ministers: Interior, Defense, Environment, lands and natural resources.
We interviewed, the news before this show spoke to Mutala.
Yes.
He spoke on behalf of the committee.
Absolutely. And then there were officials from EPA, Minerals Commission, and what have you. So it is clear that some major decisions will be taken in respect of Galamsey. One of them is that airline will go, and the necessary legislative agenda will be kickstarted.
Have you taken
to ensure that
judicial notice of complaints against the MP for our win? I believe it's our win.
I saw it today, but I can assure you that the president is very stern in these matters, except that if he is an MP, the president does not have remit over him because he belongs to independent. But if he happens to be a minister, then you know the president will take action if such matters come before him. There have been people who have suffered consequences for far less when President Mahama was previously minister. You recall the 3R DC. So he was dismissed for standing his ground on that matter.
So what is the president's posture towards Galamsey? Will he put his presidency on the line?
He is going to wage a ruthless battle against it. He does not subscribe at all.
When will he start?
Oh, it has started immediately, indeed, with this meeting. And in the coming days, you see significant action in that direction.
Because there's
of course,
a growing concern that the
there's a danger.
Has come down.
See, sometimes there's a danger to fall into empty sloganeering, as was the case under President Akufo-Addo. When he said he was going to put his presidency on the line, it was not clear which line he was putting it on. Eventually, Ghanaians passed a verdict that showed deep dissatisfaction with his performance. But the point is that we will not be drawn into sloganeering. The actions will be substantive, they will be concrete, and they will be swift, and you will see them. Yes.
So the Stop Galamsey Now fight will continue?
It will have to continue. Today we saw heart-wrenching data, pictures, evidence of the destruction that is being done. We were told that up to about 5 million square kilometers of forest reserve had been encroached upon by Galamseyers. Out of about 240 or so, 288 forest reserves, 43 have been impacted by Galamsey. And the turbidity levels of our water has become so bad. It's supposed to be 500 NTU. Now we are in excess of 12,000 NTU. In addition to that, there is serious poisoning of our water bodies through chemicals like cyanide and what have you. These are not acceptable. And so President Mahama will take firm action. Indeed, at the last but one ministerial swearing-in, he stated that anybody who enters a forest reserve purporting to be doing so on the authority of the NDC should be immediately arrested. He has said that he is going to ban the granting of licenses to people who mine in forest reserves and that he will revoke the ones that have been previously granted. So this is a president who is focused on doing what is right as far as
Let me just clarify a few final points, and thank you for staying there. The human sexual, I don't even know how to call it, proper family values bill.
I struggle to pronounce it.
They call it the Anti-LGBTQ bill. It's a bit of confusion. Is the president saying he prefers a government-sponsored bill because there's a private-led effort in the previous parliament?
But I see no confusion. I wonder where that confusion is supposed to have come from. So there was this meeting between the Catholic Bishops' Conference who called on the president to congratulate him for his victory. They came with about 3 or 4 items. The first one was concerned about the post-electoral violence, which they condemned. The second one had to do with LGBTQ. They wanted to know the president's position on it. And then the third one was that they expressed regrets and dissatisfaction over the scrapping of the teaching of RMU, religious and moral education. I'm sure that's something you know your religious stance. I mean, it's not something that you agree with them on it. Now, the president in response said that yes, LGBTQ is alien to our culture. It is most un-Ghanaian. And that is not something that we will ever accept. But unfortunately, through some design, the hand of the president was stayed from granting assent to the bill as it was passed then. That is, the hand of President Akufo-Addo was stayed. Because of that, the bill has elapsed. So there's no bill as we speak. So it would have to be reworked.
So you can't send a bill from a previous parliament to a new one?
The moment the tenure of the parliament elapses and the bill has not been signed, it's completely sparse. So it has to be reworked, sent to parliament, and the process has to be started. So he said that rather than being a private member's bill, this time it should have governmental backing. It should be a government bill. Then he said that in respect of the issue raised by the Catholic bishops on the scrapping of RME, he agreed with their position that it is a regrettable decision and that it has not boded well for proper upbringing of our children. And that if indeed RME was still being taught, he was confident that issues like LGBT will not come
up.
And that there will be no need for a bill. Yes, that there will be no need for a bill because children will be raised right, and that they will not even think.
So that's how it was confused that he's saying that he prefers it to be.
And the media was there. The media covered it. Indeed, I've seen the clips played. So I wonder how anybody can say that there was confusion when the president was so clear on the issues. So it's pretty surprising.
Maybe in mentioning the LGBTQ and talking about it being taught in schools, because one of the reasons why there was a whole clamor for the bill was that there was...
No, he didn't say they should teach LGBT. He said that if religious and moral education was taught, proper upbringing...
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. In using it in the language of teaching and school and the bill, maybe that's...
No, I don't think that there should be any confusion.
So is it do you think it was mischief?
Just... Well,
you think so?
I don't think it was mischief. Perhaps it was a misunderstanding. I want to grant the media that there was really no mischief.
So are you confirming that the current government will sponsor the same bill?
The president has given indication. Well, of course, I don't see any reason why it should not even be open up for further discussion. Perhaps it could be strengthened even more.
Well, because you were so clear it should be signed. When you were so it means that it was good enough to be signed.
Yes, but
why does it need to change?
But there's nothing wrong with improving it further. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. You need to listen to stakeholders and see what can be done to strengthen it.
Has the AG been asked to look at it yet?
Well, not yet. I think the process will start. There's a government that is barely a month old, remind you. So there are many things that are on the plate that will be done. But eventually, I believe strongly that it will be brought to
Are you on course for your 120-day social contract?
Yes, we are indeed. It's good that you asked. Tomorrow, there's a team that is being put in place, populated by many sector ministers, because it is a multi-sectoral thing. The promises that were given fall under various sectors. So tomorrow the president will inaugurate that team. It's a task force that will work on it. So you will hear about it tomorrow.
So 120 days is 4 months?
It's 4 months, yes.
First 4 months?
First 4 months. By ending of April, and these are very realistic things. Indeed, many of them are already in motion. The constitution review is in motion. The economic dialogue is coming on. The education dialogue is coming on. And many others. Some of them do not even require any funding. Some of them is just legislative. Some of them are policy.
So it means you promise you come back after 120 days.
Oh yes, I'll be more than happy.
We've done 35 of the 120.
Yes, I'll be more than happy to come here to do a review of the 120 days.
All right, so please put it on the record. Yes. Out of magnanimity and goodwill for the new government, we are going to air the 17-minute documentary.
Well, thank you. And I must say, you are doing it pro bono, so it's quite helpful. Yes. We are partners in this, aren't we?
Really?
Yes.
Okay. You are announcing that we are doing it pro bono. I'm sure you've spoken to the CEO. So this is a job that was put... So was it your team that did this?
Yes, there's a team at the presidency that does this.
Some people think you are getting the media redundant because now every 1 week you produce a colorful, I won't call it newsletter, almost like a magazine of presidency activities. High quality colored with everything.
Yes, because we have a high quality team at the presidency. Again, it emphasizes...
Are you trying to make us unemployed?
No, not at all. It's only complementing your work.
Is it?
Absolutely. You cover the news throughout the week. At the end of the day, there are many things that intervene, and so there's not an attempt to put everything together in the way that we do. We are interested in letting the public know what the president has done over the week. So it is in our interest that
you produce it yourself?
Oh, absolutely.
You don't need the media houses?
We have in-house capacity, and that speaks to the point I'm making, that you don't need a legion of people to do work efficiently. There's a very small team. There are about 4 people in charge of that production. There's a photographer, a videographer, a video editor, and a graphic designer, and they get it done.
I see.
Yes.
The only blot is that as we speak, we have only 275 MPs.
Yes.
Ablekuma North is still outstanding.
Again, this is a major failure on the part of the Electoral Commission. I cannot believe that they simply cannot decide what to do in that. You see, again, it speaks about...
But both sides are putting too much pressure on them.
Yeah, no.
Your people are making one demand, MPP is making another demand.
Yes, but so it is just like saying that on the football field, because both teams are protesting decisions, the referee should not act. It is not acceptable. The Electoral Commission is a state institution that has been there for decades. If they are not able to manage the processes in one constituency, it's a major blot on them.
Will you guarantee their safety if the decision goes against you? Because maybe they are afraid that some members of your party may attack them.
Bernard, we lost 88 seats. 88 seats. Indeed, in 2020, 8 people died. We understand that in this election, 5 people have died. All on the watch of the previous government. Not an ant or fly will be hurt if the Electoral Commission does what they have to do at Ablekuma North. It is obvious that at this stage, they themselves do not seem to know what they have to do. And that is regrettable. I mean, if you have a whole state institution that receives the kind of funding that they get, and they are unable to get their ass together in one constituency, it's a major blotter. Indeed, they did the same to SAL. For 4 years, they were denied representation. through no fault of the people of South. And they appear to be on course to do same with Ablekuma. So perhaps the media needs to shine a greater light on it and demand accountability from the Electoral Commission.
So I'm thanking you for coming on the show. But you're also thanking me for airing the documentary.
We appreciate the support.
Which you say you have discussed with my boss. So I'm assuming that it's been discussed. So it's going to be played 17 minutes chronicling the activities of the president in his first 30 days. Thank you for watching tonight's edition of the show. We'll segue right into that. My name is Benadable. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.